Hi, it's been a while. My name is Zach, and today I want to talk about the end. Most of this is really short works. I encourage you to check out these works on your own first, if it's not too inconvenient. But I know you're lazy, so you won't, even though it's good and easy for you to do. When's the last time you've had a carrot? Spoilers for The 9 Billion Names of God, Last Contact, and Nightfall. A story is only as good as its ending. While a story is running through its beginning and middle, it both aims to satisfy your expectations and also excite you with surprises. That's not a contradiction, though, but it feels that way. After all, part of our expectation is being surprised. But at the end of a story, you have the final statement on themes and developments. We might follow a protagonist who's a jerk the whole time, running around, being a menace, not returning shopping carts and all that. But in the end, we receive our message. Maybe the jerk meets a punishment or learns a lesson, or in a subversion is rewarded for being a jerk. And at last, the audience is forced to reflect on that. Are we to hear the first case and think, yeah, I'm glad that guy got hurt? Are we to see the second case and think, oh, that's nice? Are we supposed to use a third sense, I don't know, taste, for the third case and think, wow, what a brutalist perspective? A story has many endings within it. Each period is a full stop, and your idea ends there with its own weight to be considered. In the most distilled way I can simplify, a story is constructed of endings, and it's up to the reader to provide their answers to what they believe those endings mean. When I told you about that jerk protagonist, it's up to you to reflect on whether or not you like them and the story they're in, whether you think they can change, and whether you think the story is telling you that it's okay to be like them. More complicated stories don't necessarily have more complicated endings, although they can. Rather, they have more endings within them for you to consider, and as a result, they're less clear on what they're telling you. This allows you to posit more of your own answers throughout the work. But as you reach that last page, you'll encounter a frightening prospect. Oh god, it's a spider! Oh, relax. Oh, it's crushed flat. Thank god you got the hardback. Jeez. The ending of a story acts as its last opportunity. The last sentence, the last paragraph, the last idea that it serves you. Before this point, the story can always apply further nuance. It can deliver to you a jerk protagonist, then show you victims of their jerkiness. Jerky. And then show you that the world rewards their aggression. And then it can say that aliens came down and destroyed them all and that none of it mattered. The story can do this forever, molding its themes as it goes. But in the end, it must reveal a final statement. Usually, the ending contextualizes the rest of the story, not necessarily because the ending is special, but because nothing else can then, again, recontextualize it. After all, it's the ending. There's nothing left to textualize. One day, life on the Earth will end. One day, the solar system will end. One day, the universe itself will end. We have pretty good guesses for the mechanism of these endings, and we even have good estimates for the timelines of these endings. And yet, I haven't necessarily said that humanity will end. Sure, every other example we have of life trends toward ending, or perhaps changing. But there's still uncertainty. Who's to say humans won't leave the planet, leave our planet and solar system, perhaps even leave this very universe? These aren't short-term ponderings. These are very long time. But what is time to these things, these long, grand ideas? We've accomplished great deeds in the cosmic blink of an eye. You haven't, but we have. While insignificant in size compared to the vast suns and stardust, humanity is significant just having put names onto those things. For now, we have no ending. We write something new each day. Of course, we're very close to the event horizon of a few possible ends. But even if those horizons are crossed, it will be a while before we're pulled in. But why do we care so much about the ending? The end of the world, the universe, humanity, whatever. I'm still lamenting the ending of the CiCi's Pizza desserts from the 90s. Those breadstick things, but they had like cream sauce on them, like chocolate or like a Bavarian cream kind of thing. I loved that stuff when I was a kid, and they've stopped serving them. Now they just do cinnamon rolls, which are fine. And I remember there was like a week before New Year's where my family took me to CiCi's Pizza, and they had just gotten a new manager who was so pleasant. He proactively asked the room if anyone had pizza requests, and I remember how vocal people were about how that day's pizzas were particularly good, fresh, fast compared to what it had been before. And then they closed like the next month, recontextualizing the whole scenario as being one man's spiral toward madness. The point is, we care a great deal about the ending because, like I said before, the ending recontextualizes the story. Our ending reflects on everything that came before, and so it affects us. And I mean us, you and me, and what we do. In this way, there's a strange subversion here. You might think that we generate the ending, that you and I contribute toward it, toward some goal. But in a way, it's the opposite. Our efforts are made futile or fruitful, as if ignoring our agency. You were a great manager, but CiCi's is a sinking ship. What the hell is this? What are you doing? I know that's a huge relief for you to hear, since you're a huge bummer, that things might turn out fine even though you're here. But you should still eat that carrot soon. Arthur Clarke Clarke, I'm only guessing at what the C stands for, wrote in 1953 a short story called The 9 Billion Names of God. In it, two Westerners operate a computer, and it generates text to help a monastery of monks. The monks believe that God's purpose for the universe is to have all his names listed. To accomplish this task, the monks have devised a method by which to accomplish the task. I'm reading that sentence. That's a really stupid sentence. Embarrassing. Who wrote this? Let's try something else. They've employed philosophy and logic to design a unique alphabet and its syntactic rules such that only 9 characters are necessary to represent any of God's names. And they've been writing these characters in order, manually entering each possible permutation of letters. And they've now realized that modern technology can churn out what remains in a matter of months. Before then, they were just handwriting it. They pay the Westerners exorbitantly to help them, because the monks believe that this task is the purpose of the universe. So once it's concluded, once every name of God has been listed, the universe will be complete, ended. And the story ends in this same way. The Westerners are leaving prematurely. They're anxious that the monks will grow angry with them when the task concludes, and then they realize the world doesn't end, right? These Westerners think they're crazy. After all, you'd have to be crazy to believe this stuff. But they also notice that their excuses to exit are observed as transparent. The monks know what's happening. They know the Westerners are bailing, and they simply don't care that the Westerners won't be there. They're assured in their knowledge. The story ends with God turning out the lights. The stars blink out of existence one by one. It's a quiet ending. There's no grandeur. It's a whispered apocalypse. One you might not even notice until you're gone. You'd wake up dead. Wait a minute.
How the hell do you wake up dead? Because you're alive when you go to sleep.
The story puts it best, that the universe ends without a fuss. And what I liked about the story was how it seems so anticlimactic. How can it be that the mechanism that ends the universe is so rote, pun intended? It feels wrong that we can solve our purpose with such a mundane, repetitive task, instead of what you might expect to be some kind of philosophical or moral revelation. You'd expect our purpose, if we have one, to be something meaningful and beautiful. And so here, the ending fits the story. The monks end the world with a boring chore of a task, not even performed by people. And this task brings about the least interesting possible end. This anticlimax feels arbitrary. If you'd have replaced the task of the monks with something else stupid, the ending would fit, instead of writing gods' names. What if they were just counting every gumball produced in 2008? And so just listing each number until they got it right? To me, it's the juxtaposition of this petty task alongside the apocalypse that just feels so unfair. Anticlimactic does describe it, but when you're describing the end of the world, it pivots and sours into becoming unfair, wrong somehow. You might continue in this line of thought, wondering where the line even is. What kind of purpose isn't unfair? If the purpose of the universe was to achieve true empathic love of all creatures, would that be enough? If the world ended in a peaceful lights out while we all had a big group hug, I'd still be angry. I'd be angry because the universe's end, to me, feels like a scientific thing. It needs to be a heat death or something with quantum in the title. It needs to have an understandable mechanism. It can't be a ritual. It can't be that there's something that feels like a narrative. Why would listing names end the world? It makes sense in a story. It makes sense to the rules of a ritual, or of worship, or if we apply some kind of personality to the universe. But that's not the universe I know. The universe I know is a cold, apathetic thing. It has no interest in you. It's not fair. Oh. See, this intersection between the mystic and the empirical is a motif in the story, or it might also be a theme. It can be both. The monks meeting with the Westerners, and notably, these monks are not crazy. They apply logic and philosophy to the task, giving their agenda an air of credibility to these computer scientists. While there's no similar meeting in the middle for the Westerners, I believe this is because Clarke tends to write stories for an audience that is more skeptical of the mystic than the scientific. So he gives effort toward bridging the gap to meet his audience. I don't believe this is a shortcoming of the theme. You see, when you intersect these understandings, you can only arrive at this kind of story. See, God is a personality with rituals and story. God has goals and dictates and purpose and plans. The universe, conversely, is arbitrary and apathetic. To combine the two forces God to become a frightening entity, devoid of empathy, and it forces the universe to become a sinister environment with purpose beyond reason. It forces us to become a function in a grand machine plugging away toward a finality that necessarily means our role is complete. And this is an unusual result, isn't it? You see, commonly, people consider it empathy to try to reconcile the supernatural with the mundane. It's viewed as open-minded to accept the notion of the religious if you're an atheist, or conversely, to absorb metaphorical interpretations into your religion. It's bridging the gap, it's empathy. But here, we see a tainting instead, where the sum is worse than either independent part. I've heard it from atheistic spheres that they don't want their hard science and facts to be blemished by feeling and faith. Yet, this story shows us an interesting reversal, where we see a God we expect to be loving, now made into something as unfeeling as cold science, flickering out existence as easily and thoughtlessly as it was brought in to be, in a single motion, revealing that our creation was as trivial as its resolution. After all, if the world ends without a fuss, what was the worth of its start? Is it worse that we were not just arbitrary, we were also made to believe we mattered? No, of course not. There can be no worse in this ending. There's no metric of quality in arbitrary creation. You can try to reconcile this problem by arguing that actually the universe is a caring place, or perhaps by arguing that it's unknowable, and therefore must be something further that we've yet to discover about it, and that would reveal to us some deeper underlying nature. Yeah, cope harder. It's not a new belief that the world is unfair, wanton, and uncaring. If you ever want to feel smarter than me, I have pronounced wanton as wonton until very recently. No one ever uses the word in person. I don't know. I didn't know. I've only read it. Anyway, it's not naive to expect there to be some beautiful revelation in the future. It's ambitiously ignorant. Also, by the way, let's be honest here. The story is hilarious. Like, shake off the dread and think about how you'd react if you heard God's booming voice declare to you, "You did it! You did your task! We're done now." That's really funny and scary, but it's funny. In our search for meaning, we might forget that to have meaning means to have concrete achievement. That you can attain some fulfillment means there's a box to check. And in doing so, should you ask yourself what it means to do, to fulfill? What really are the odds that you complete your purpose at the end of your life? What if you finish sooner? Your purpose was to give birth to the guy who cures cancer. What will you do for your remaining 50 years? But something that's interesting about this work is that the end of the world is, in some way, our fault. You could argue that we weren't compelled into listing God's names, but in this next work, our helplessness against the end of the world is a bit more overt. Stephen Baxter's story, Last Contact, is a tale of dead men walking. A doomed Earth discovers its reality, down to the minute, and shambles forward with a society devoid of future. What's your response to hopelessness? Most people in the story ignore it, for as much as they can. They cope. People still go to school, and sure, a few quit their jobs, but most people continue working for the months ahead. Slowly, though, the motions aren't enough. Supply chains fail, and rationing starts. Things trudge along, if it's important, like a supermarket, but for jobs that nobody wants, street sweepers and trash collectors, that's totally tossed out. Garbage just collects in the streets. Practically, would you really want to do the nasty work in your last days? Metaphorically, these are tasks of societal maintenance, the things we must do to keep the world turning, but they're not glamorous. The world needs janitors, they say, sure, but now we see what happens when there's soon going to be no world. Astronomers receive alien messages. The universe, suddenly, is vibrant and alight with voices. Pings are sent, a dozen a day, each one a culture, and its unfathomable storied history and understanding. What did they experience? What did they know? Scientists try to decipher it, but there isn't enough time. Could we save ourselves, even if we did succeed in learning what they know? And not all the messages are meaningful. One is a beautiful flare tossed into a star. What meaning could that have? Nothing more than we are here. As Maureen succinctly puts it, maybe that's enough. When the day arrives, Caitlin listens to the last episode of The Archers. For those of you who aren't British, which is hopefully a lot, that's very symbolic. It's the longest running radio drama. It started in the 50s and it continues today. Some of its cast were raised on the show as young adults and are now close to retiring. The show is a lifetime, and that's to say nothing of its cultural impact or catchy theme. I'll admit. The sun goes out, washed away in minutes. Maureen comments on bringing blankets in case it would be cold without the sun. But we won't last long enough for it to get cold. They discuss how all the churches are packed. Caitlin mentions that they had a party earlier since there'd be no more Christmases or birthdays. And, just to spare the fear of the end, her husband and kids had taken pills to head out early, as it were. They wonder if this is a transition, just like any other in the universe's history, as if they can't accept the end. Musings, more than anything substantial. In the end, the story's last little piece of wisdom is that Maureen had a strong assumption for what the messages could mean. She believes there's no point in deciphering them, because there's no information in it. She believes that everyone is just saying their own version of goodbye. Faced with the end, what else is there to say? Last Contact is more overt about our helplessness. While there's a romantic suffering to the idea that our finale is something we bring upon ourselves, Baxter is more concerned with the ending when it's inevitable. It would have happened regardless. We were only smart enough to curse ourselves with the knowledge of its coming. And in this reflection, I wonder if there's a significant difference. If our end is brought about by our actions, surely it's prevented by our inaction. We don't have to list God's names. We could choose to survive, unlike in Baxter's story, where participation is irrelevant. But I honestly think it's a very human thing to pursue your own end. Like I said before, when you reframe the fulfillment of your purpose to be the end of your meaningful life, then you accept that the end can't be prevented by inaction. The action must happen. It's purpose. It's very human to write the 9 billion names. After all, that's how many Pokemon there are now, and I can name them all. Skeeter Davis sang a song titled The End of the World, with lyrics written by Arthur Kent and Sylvia D. To call the song historic is an understatement, with many professional covers and countless uses in television and film from the moment it dropped to today. It charted across multiple genres and countries. The lyrics drip with a pain sourced from Dee's father's recent passing. Davis' performance is a droning one that lacks flourish. It's direct and understated, prioritizing sincerity. This isn't an overproduction that puts talent or style at the forefront. Instead, it's a soft and vulnerable speaker in a daze, conveying a believable bewilderment at how things just go on, even when you feel a part of you is torn out. The song is not about a literal end of the world. It instead uses the end of the world as emphasis for the severity of the pain that a loss can bring, and despite its acclaim, it has been criticized. It's toxic, the degree that the speaker applies self-loathing and melodrama to her suffering. Yes, the experience is painful, but cataclysmic? Far from it. And personally, I never really liked this criticism. While I believe that the wonder of life is in its infinite source of joy, that any pain can eventually be filled by the boundless wellspring around you, I also understand that there are temporary dearths. There may be years of suffering in between happiness. The singer is allowed to feel like she's nothing. After all, she just lost her everything. But what I like about the song is how it makes me consider the inverse. This song takes something personal and chooses to emphasize its feeling by scaling it up to the apocalypse. How can anything go on the way it does? Don't they know it's the end? I can't help but wonder if that's the only way to experience the end. Personally, if the world ended in cataclysm, it wouldn't be a public thing. I mean, it would be, but like to you. The only way you'd understand it is through your perspective. It doesn't matter how many people are around you. You'll die alone. The end is a personal experience, private to each of us. The song isn't about this, mind you, but it makes me think about how the very public ending of things is weirdly an isolating experience. Even if a grand flood takes out your whole city block, the only way you will know it is from your own end. The sharing of the experience isn't real, beyond what you might try to make it out to be. That is to say, two people can die together without sharing the experience. Skeeter Davis' song is about her personal experience with a tragedy, and she compares it to a grander event. And it reminds me that a grand event is indistinguishable from a personal tragedy. How does the public nature of the end of the world change my relationship to it? It's still personal to me. In this way, how is Davis' song meaningfully different from a literal end to the world? And this is not a hopeless perspective either. I've used negative language so far, calling it isolating, but I also think it's valid to view this as a rejection of meaninglessness. I can override the universe's apathy toward me, even as it destroys everyone, by saying, no, I acknowledge you, I see that you're hurting me. Maybe it's just coping with the understanding of how small I am in a big world, but I feel empowered to know that my singular perspective gives me the power to construe, and even to misconstrue, something acting upon me. Isaac Asimov, oh, that's a great name. I hope he respects women. He once wrote a story called Nightfall. And this one's a bit longer than the other works I've mentioned. You can still find it online pretty easily if you want to read it. If you're anything like Asimov, then it's probably best for everyone if you stay inside and read it online. Easier for you to keep your hands to yourself that way. Nightfall tells the story of a planet, Lagash. Lagash? Let me get a read on that real quick. Oh, an hour and a half reading of it, really?
Nightfall. Theremin said,
This is gonna take a while, huh?
Self-confidence. I don't believe it's much all Lagash.
Lagash? That's stupid. Okay, fine. Where am I? Oh, keep your hands... Okay. Nightfall tells the story of a planet, Lagash, doomed to cyclical destruction. Every 2,000 years, the planet's civilization ends, and they've found archaeology supporting the existence of 9 prior collapses. This is already pretty striking. How do you deal not only with the knowledge of your imminent end, but also the lack of closure that this particular end brings? It's not even an end. You're just one of many ends. I'll cut through the literary analysis of the characters and the framing of the narrative for this video, but that's interesting if you want to do that stuff on your own. Oh, who am I kidding? We both know you won't read. The explanation is important, not just for what it tells you, but for what it implies. These people living on Lagash believe they're alone. They explain the decades spent and lives dedicated to studying the theory of gravity. They explain how difficult it was to learn these things because Lagash is surrounded by multiple suns, and that it was harrowing just to discover that the suns didn't orbit the planet. Can you imagine how complicated the math would be, and for them to derive it all with ever-changing gravitational conditions? But more importantly, they realized that their math was off. Lagash was moving as if being acted upon by a force other than just those suns nearby. What could this mean? Well, they theorize that it's possible there's another astral body that's invisible, not their suns, and that this affects Lagash's movement. The explainer tells that a theoretical astral body could exist that would explain the gravitational discrepancy, and amazingly, it also would perfectly eclipse the multiple suns of Lagash once every 2,000 years. This eclipse, lasting half a day, plunges Lagash and all its people into darkness. These people, on a planet with several suns, never know darkness. They believe that this darkness causes the people to go mad and then destroy everything. And I, as the reader, felt incredible pity. These people are so small. They can't know the vastness of the universe around them. To not even know the stars? To be so ignorant of the immensity of everything that at its reveal, your mind just melts into insanity. The story takes great effort to build what kind of a person you'd be if you had eternal sunlight. These people can't go into caves, for the darkness there drives them to terror. The fear of the dark is something that already exists in our reality, and we have to deal with darkness half the time. Imagine now that same unknown, that same blackness that conceals anything and everything. And now imagine that you've never had to face it before. These people don't have electrical lights. Why would they? Every moment for them is bright, sunny daylight. And if it's too much, just draw up some curtains. But it's never too little light. Critical to the story is the idea that the fear of darkness to these people is claustrophobic. To them, darkness only exists in enclosed spaces. So when they're within darkness, they feel this intense pressure, like the walls close in on them. They feel trapped, crushed. To them, a mere 15 minutes of darkness is sufficient to drive mad about 1 in 10 of them. Imagine what kind of damage 12 hours of panic would do to everyone all simultaneously. Their fear is something they can't consider or predict. They can't even imagine what total darkness is like. They are a people who have never experienced it, a total blackout of everything. How could you prepare for that? Worse, they try to. They try to understand, but they can't realize how hopelessly far from truth they are. 2 researchers enclosed themselves into a pitch-dark building that had covered holes poked through the roof. And at a switch, they could reveal the holes to the sunlight above to simulate an idea of the night sky. So a cult believed that stars exist, and so they were working from that description. Again, read the story if I say something that confuses you. Anyway, but in this simulated room, there was no effect. They failed. To them, it just felt like a room with holes in the ceiling. To them, these little pinpricks of light weren't doing anything to damage their psyches. I'm sure you see the problem. The story establishes this red herring for you, that the end of the world comes from hysteria innate to our biological limitations, our fears, our lack of equipment for dealing with the reality of the world around us. But no, it's deeper than that. The stars aren't a physical phenomenon that harms these Lagacian viewers. No, the problem of the stars is that they reveal how massive the universe is. It reveals that they aren't alone. Well, not literally alone. Rather, they're alone in the sense that there are countless neighbors, but they're just so far away, they'll never be reached. Alone, yet not alone. Someone should make a video about that. Isolated. And honestly, how different are we from that? The Lagacians are so wrong about the actual danger that's coming upon them. They believe the danger is in the darkness, that they aren't biologically equipped to handle a night sky. They believe that civilization's collapse is caused by panicked rioting, but also of the drive to maybe create fire, that they're going to burn everything down in their pursuit of light. Indeed, did I just start a sentence with indeed? Very wise, yes, quite. The characters in the story light some candles and they feel better. No longer are they frightened by the encroaching darkness of the eclipse as it passes shadow over their main sun. And in this candlelight, they don't even realize that the problem isn't darkness. It's what the darkness finally allows to be seen. The story ends with the long night. These people, expecting maybe a handful of stars, literally only 2 or 3 based on reports from the cult, are met instead with a night sky that's endless, much like the shrimp from Red Lobster. Here, Asimov reveals that Lagash is not like Earth. Earth has about 4,000 stars visible to the naked eye, and the story says that we have like 3,600 stars visible. Lagash has 10 times what we see. Lagash is within a galaxy cluster. Its sky would be alight and buzzing with bright worlds an eternity away, each one unfathomably diverse. The universe is cold and vast, for this was the dark and the cold and the doom. The bright walls of the universe were shattered, and their awful black fragments were falling down to crush and squeeze and obliterate him. My favorite aspect of sci-fi is that it allows an author to make a new culture. To me, people are the best part of life. I love how different we are, how some of us, like you, have terrible perspectives that I can mock, while others, like me and my friends, are really cool and funny and stuff. And I love that these people, the Lagacians, conflate darkness to suffocation. They equate the fear of darkness with the fear of enclosure. I think that's awesome, because to me, it's the opposite. To me, darkness is scariest when I can't hide. When I'm afraid of the dark, I hide under the covers, or I hold my breath in a locked closet. Enclosure gives me security from the unknown that the darkness conceals. Whatever unknown I can't see, I want to ensure I'm hidden such that it can't see me either. But to a Lagacian, the universe is known. All your world is light, and all your history is known. But to be faced with the revelation that your truth was unfathomably wrong, it breaks everything. It breaks who you are and also what built you. It's a complete restructuring. We didn't know anything. We couldn't know. You have to feel pity for the Lagacians, because they never had a chance. The kind of being they have is one fundamentally doomed to falter when faced with reality. And upon realizing this, the reader understands that they aren't too different from a Legashian. Humans are very lucky that an errant meteor hasn't hit them yet, because there's no rule that says we must survive. We've managed to steer clear of extermination for our history so far, sure, but that's just been luck. We've made a real mess of the climate. Maybe some fancy bacteria might resist our medicine, or maybe plastics will get us, or maybe it could be AI. That's a new one, and it's a lot cooler than the other ones. But we've always been afraid of the end. But we've always managed to avoid it. When the population increased, we improved agriculture. When disease and war killed us faster than we really wanted to tolerate, we improved our medicine. It's a shame it took us a little longer to make that medicine for women too, but one thing at a time. But there isn't a rule that this must be the case. It's just that it's happened to be the case so far. A meteor could arrive that we can't repel. That's just possible. It's not likely, but it's possible. I think it's more likely that our demise will be our own making, just because that's kind of how we operate. We make the population first, and the agriculture improvements come later. We make the AI, and then safety measures come later. We make the plastics, cleanup comes later. The general trend is that we kind of advance organically, not mindfully. And so eventually something's gotta come out that just takes too long to fix. But, forgive me for being a contrarian, but, why should I care? I do care. I care. But why? Rationally, why care? Here's the thing. I don't believe life has any meaning in the objective sense. So what's it to me if the end is imminent? If meaning is something ephemeral, debatable, and personalized to each of us, then what matters if we all go tomorrow or in a billion years after I've long been forgotten? Actually, what's the meaningful difference between being destroyed and being forgotten? If civilization ended, how is that really different from me dying? Either way, I can't be there to experience it. Well, maybe it's the certainty of it. I can say that nothing matters, that being dead is being non-existent, and that a future where I'm forgotten is no meaningfully different from a future where I'm destroyed. But I can cling to some ability to shrug my shoulders and say, but I don't really know, so let's move on. I can't do that with certainty. Well, that's a weird sentence to say. With certainty, I can't do that. If scientists told me that the world was ending in a month, I'd be aghast. Wrong-gassed. I kind of have shelter from my own logic. I can say that certainty is impossible, and so I have an excuse to stop thinking about it. When I die, I can pass along with a wondering that maybe there's something neat coming up, even if I think it's unlikely. But with the end of the world, there's an uncomfortable confidence in its discomfort. You have to stand and say with composure that your position, your idea, that nothing matters in a grand scale, it now must be true or not. And if you're wrong, it's suddenly the most important mistake that anyone can ever make. The end of the world is scary. It sticks in our heads like tar, gunking up our works and reeking up the place with its stink. Why? Well, because the ending is everything. We fear death. We fear the unknown. We fear powerlessness. We fear being forgotten, despite knowing that these must be the case eventually. To return to Nightfall, this story is the intersection of reason and instinct. There's a tension in humans, since we're animals that have risen to a level where we can override our nature. But it's important to understand that this is an active process, not a passive one. We aren't evolutionarily different from our ancestor apes in a significant way, just because we wear clothes and use digital clocks. Well, some of us wear clothes. Even this alligator wears a hat. I feel that most of human compassion and morality is taught. It's a product of culture rather than any kind of biological imperative. That is to say, you believe something's good because you've learned that it's good, or because you learned some prior axiom is good, and then you rationally concluded from that some other goodness. You believe harm is wrong to cause, and therefore it's bad to steal something because it will deny that other person some benefit and make them feel sad or whatever. But if you had learned a different axiom, you'd draw a different conclusion. If you were raised in, an ancient Greek society where strength was virtuous and to be a powerful person was to emulate your gods in some ontologically noble way, then you might consider theft to be moral and an ethical expression of the proper way of things. You might view the weak as being wrong, not unlucky, unnatural, or morally improper. You might view morality as meritocracy. I don't mean to get into philosophy or history here. Obviously, feel free to disagree if you want. You can be wrong. But my purpose in saying this is that I can feel this powerful tension in my own anxiety. I believe that humanity is kept above pain and danger by our social structures, that their removal would not be immoral, but rather amoral. If you took away a person's ability to get food for themselves, you'd return that person to an animal. After all, we are only high-minded people because of our ability to escape those lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy. Once you force people into base-level survival needs, you can't be surprised when they behave accordingly. And so, I think of these things when I read this story. I consider how fear and hysteria can collapse civilization, and, post-collapse, how humanity would be savage again. Intelligent, but not educated. Cunning, but not kind. I think we forget that humans are not above these base needs, but rather that we make ourselves above these base needs. We built our ladders to get us above senseless cruelty, but that's only because we managed to climb until we achieved sensibility. If someone kicked us back down, they need to be ready for barbarity. So, in a video about the end of the world, what should my ending be? I'm reminded of an ancient Buddhist story, but because it's foreign, they call it something cooler than story. They call it a koan. In the twilight of his years, a venerable monk knelt in the quiet earth, setting the roots of a young tree. A callow wanderer passing by said, "Old one, why plant what you shall not live to see in fullness?" And the monk answered, "Kick rocks, you freak. It's my garden. I can do whatever the fuck I want." Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing or something. I'll see you later.